Hi, you're listening to the Now Granted podcast. This is episode 1, where we will be talking about a few different topics ranging from Arpaio running for Senate in Arizona all the way to turtles having straws stuck up their noses. So stay tuned. My name's Ryan Hoskins, and I'm here with...
I'm Kevin.
And I'm Mikey.
And I hope you enjoy the rest of the episode.
Joe Arpaio is running for our Senate.
Oh! Joe Arpaio.
Yeah.
Oh. Man, actually, you know what? Let's talk about that first, because I'm actually that's actually kind of new. I haven't heard about this.
Oh, you haven't?
Why have I?
Yeah, he's been running for a while, hasn't he?
I have not. Oh, wow. I have not heard about this. So, all right, Kevin, Brian, give me the scoop on this one.
Well, all I know is that I just saw some signs. I was like, what?
Joe Arpaio.
Yeah, so I don't know anything about his campaign. Did he get pardoned by Trump?
He did.
Whatever
He did.
may or may not have happened.
What may or may not have happened. What do you call it? His what was it? What was he charged with? It was a misdemeanor. I know that.
Was it just obstruction?
Let me say. Let me see. Joe Arpaio. Bulls News. So, back when he was charged with criminal contempt.
Oh, contempt.
So,
okay.
yeah, contempt. So contempt, and actually, but I think the most controversial thing, well, actually, one because I think it was all centered around the 1090. Was it 1090? Was there was the AB bill or the bill that passed when it came to immigration about how they should more or less check for identification and proof of citizenship.
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of caused a big kind of outrage when that passed. And I think I was still in high school when that thing was. Yeah, I think I was like a senior in high school when they passed that.
Well, what everybody was getting upset about him was how he made him wear.
That's another thing.
They were claiming that making him wear pink underwear, because apparently they were having a problem where inmates were stealing clothing that they would then take with them outside of the prison, and so they just decided to make it all pink, and the theft, stopped.
Yeah. I don't think that was the worst. I think
no, that was not the worst. He also did like sweat gangs.
Chain gangs.
Highway. Well, no, they called them sweat gangs because it's Arizona, and it'd be like a.
Yeah. So I don't know what your guys' thought on it, because this is actually an interesting thing. Before we actually kind of continue into the whole kind of Arpaio kind of, I don't know much of a legacy, but I find it interesting is that when the state takes you into custody, right? More or less, the state is more or less given itself all the responsibility for your care, well-being, and so that was kind of like the argument for like maybe not the sweat gangs all so much, but Tent City, if you guys heard about that, which pretty much is just a bunch of tents surrounded by a big chain link fence and guard towers, and that's where they would and that was the county jail, and that's where they put all the prisoners in county, was just out in tents in the middle of the heat.
Yeah.
And so people weren't particularly happy about that.
Yeah.
So that was kind of another.
I don't know why people seems pretty reading.
You could find, I think the idea was like when you had, like what was the argument was like if our soldiers are fighting out in 120-degree weather, then, like why shouldn't our prison, why do inmates have to be in air conditioning?
Well,
which
and they're in tents, right?
Yeah, well, in tents or in barracks or where they're quartered out in the field, out in the Middle East, but again, the thing that kind of where the state takes on responsibility for you. So I don't know. It's I find it's an interesting concept to me, because at one point it's like, yeah, maybe because they are wards of the state. I don't think it's beneficial for the state to intentionally make the lives of those that they're charged with like miserable. I don't know.
I don't know that we need them to be miserable, but I mean, I'd like to air condition. I mean, the only thing the Constitution outlaws will end unusual.
Yeah.
So they can up to that the right they want.
Well, didn't Tent
Well,
City
that's
get
definitely cruel and unusual, wouldn't you say?
You could probably get it on cruel. I mean, it's Arizona. I can't really say that.
What do you mean stay out walking in the...
I just being outside. So.
Yeah. Well, actually, Tent City's technically closed now. So.
Yeah, I'm seeing there was.
Yeah.
That's the
so
real
I'm.
problem.
And and I think that just kind of, it was Tent City, and then you have the sweat gangs, and then pretty much probably my biggest complaint Joe Arpaio is that he didn't really keep his mouth shut in a way. He kind of, in my opinion, if he stayed quiet about everything that he was doing, I think at the time the Obama administration would have just like let him alone. But he ended up going out against the Obama administration right off the bat. You know,
Yeah.
kind of one of those things. You just stay under the radar. No one's going to bother you in a sense. Even though like you have Tent City and 1090 or 1090, 1090 or 1070. That's it. My bad. And all these things like kind of bring up the media, but knowing how media was kind of back then and how media is now, like everyone's outraged for maybe a week, maybe 2 weeks about something, and then we get bored, and then we have to be outraged about something else.
Who was it that said that the United States memory?
I don't know.
It was like a turn of the 19.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah. That was based on the
something I didn't
newspaper
know.
cycle. It was based on the newspaper cycle.
Well, I mean,
I would imagine.
I don't think-
Well, even shorter today.
It's probably shorter.
Oh yeah, it's probably like 24 seconds.
Well, maybe I'd just say because of the 24-hour news cycle, maybe that just say 24 hours.
Well, yeah, but I mean, we got micro bloggers.
I mean, that's how kind of observed.
But I mean, you know, it's up to the second. The capability.
Cut off.
Oh, you got a little cut.
You guys.
Oh no.
It's
Oh no.
okay. We're back.
That's okay. But getting back to the point with Arpaio is that I think it's because he went after the Obama administration. He pretty much just more or less challenged the administration every hook and heel or every turn that they just went in and they just started falling because most of the lawsuits that were filed against Arpaio personally and the sheriff's department and against the county that he represented was Maricopa, that's Phoenix and kind of like the major part of the state.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the lawsuits were filed by the federal government over and over and over and over and over again. And probably the most controversial thing about it was that I think it was like 110, 120, maybe 140 million dollars that he spent in county money defending himself in court against and that's probably what prompted him not getting reelected. Was like even my grandparents been living there since the late 90s, mid to late 90s, and they loved Arpaio up until they found out how much it costed to defend him in court. He's just like, this is ridiculous.
Yeah, unfortunately, if we keep that as a metric, though, the way to get people down for start suing, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, imagine if we launched a campaign to lawsuit Jerry Brown. Look at how expensive to keep Jerry Brown in office. He's got 54,000 lawsuits just out of Orange County.
Yeah.
It's costing the taxpayers hundreds of millions. It's such an easy way for mobilize somebody if that's all you have, especially somebody where you're just filed against. Because it's an inmate. Of course, an inmate's going to file 50,000 lawsuits if they can, because that's all they have to do is sit there and think of reasons why the state screwed them and they deserve some money.
Yeah. So as of last year, it was at least in one racial profiling case, it was $70 million, and that was against the down to $70 million, adding to the 46 million. 24 has been funneled, and then they said up to 46 million since 2008. So, I mean, I think the numbers I said earlier were kind of inflated. They might be deflated. They might be between that ballpark, between $70 and $140 million. Now, granted, it's kind of old news, but it's like those lawsuits and then the racial profiling case, which actually, when it came to that contempt of court that was passed down, that was actually from a very conservative judge, from what I heard, that put that contempt of court case down. So it looks like that there was some evidence of racial profiling from his department and mistreatment of prisoners or of inmates in his county jails. But again, I'm not here to find guilt in this sense because I've actually kind of forgotten about everything in the case. But from what I can remember, now him running for Senate, not really. I don't know. I don't think it's a good idea, and I don't think he's going to go far.
Yeah, probably not. Is there
contempt charges? The contempt charges were for violating a federal judge's order to stop enforcing civil immigration laws.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
So I mean, that's all he got him on was that contempt, which is a misdemeanor. But it didn't really. I only know is that when he did get pardoned by Trump, it didn't really look all too well for him or for the Trump administration because there is a lot of hostility towards Arpaio, especially in Phoenix, in downtown Phoenix.
Mm-hmm.
and let's say the other emerging metropolitan areas that are growing out in the desert there or out in Arizona. I don't know. I don't see Arpaio going that far in the Senate. In the Senate race.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Is he replacing John McCain or is he replacing?
Flake, probably.
I don't know.
Can you hear me? It's Flake.
Flake?
Jeff Flake,
Flake.
yeah.
Jeff
Oh,
Flake.
Jeff Flake.
Senator Jeff Flake, he's decided not to. I don't know if they've had the primary or not yet. But, yeah, he decided not to. Basically because he just doesn't work with any siding.
Yeah. Actually, that's one person. Between both of them, one person that needs to go is probably McCain.
Yeah, definitely.
As much as I have a little personal history with McCain, he's kind of been a disappointment to the state.
Oh, yeah, for a long time.
And I mean,
he's up against Martha McSally.
What?
Trump loves her.
Oh, he's up against...
She has a commercial out.
Oh, okay. He's up against the candidate that likes, so they haven't had Mary yet.
Looks like they haven't. Yeah, well, I don't know how they do it out here, but looks like there's a bunch of Democrats, a bunch of Republicans. So there's not only two running so far, so they must have not had their primary.
Makes sense.
Yeah. Maybe Arpaio will get more votes because he's not just focused in Maricopa County. He's actually, it's the entire state, and pretty much out in the boonies when it comes to Arizona is very hardcore conservative. So, I mean, he might do better than I expect, than I'm expecting. I just don't. Maybe I just have a personal bias of it just not being a good idea.
Probably not.
Yeah, which is interesting is because Trump is the one who defended Arpaio, right? You would think that Arpaio would be Trump's man, but
Arpaio, because a lot of the heat he wanted to. He doesn't actually favors. He pardoned him.
That's true.
He's free to.
Okay, which I know nothing about.
Yeah, I don't know anything about her either.
I'm just we're out here in on the left coast here, or the west coast or the left coast. Both.
It's been the left for quite a while since Reagan.
Since the 90s, actually. It's interesting. Kind of unique thing about California is that we never really had like what we consider a purple phase, where we went from because we were a very Republican state up until the late 80s, and then pretty much at the turn of the 90s, it went blue. We went from red to blue. No purple, no, like not like Ohio or Virginia or North Carolina where you have this purple swing and then you go blue. It is red to blue.
well, Virginia's getting by all the immigrants that are coming for jobs in D.C.
Really?
Yes. So that's why it's been a fairly quick actually, because those northern counties around D.C., all the county that houses Arlington, all those places.
Okay. So those are, I'm guessing, becoming more and more blue counties, while the southern counties in Virginia are red.
Yep.
Kind of like a north-south dynamic.
Yep. Well, and it's not even a north-south dynamic. It's proximity to. You can show on a map, blue, purple, and red, and how far.
All right. So, all right, cool. Okay, I would imagine that the counties near DC are going to be blue. They tend to be. I'm guessing they tend to be wealthier, especially if you're around like Arlington and around a lot of the like the national monuments, and again proximity to DC where there's money.
So they always have been the problem huge ballooning United States federal workforce, especially at the aid level. A ton of there's aides, there's lobbyists, every.
All right. Okay.
So.
All right. So that's kind of that dynamic, just making it purple.
Yep.
But I mean, I thought Virginia went purple at least by presidential elections. By that standard, have more or less been purple since at least when McCain ran in 2008.
Well, Trump's a weird candidate. He's very mainstream Republican. So I really don't. The 26th wait.
Oh no, I said 2008.
Oh, you said
2008.
Yeah,
so I'm saying that it was kind of like that in between state in a sense, right?
Well, yeah,
that could have gone both McCain, but I think it went to Obama. And then Mitt Romney lost it, I think, went to Obama again. But like if I remember the polls and stuff like that, it was one of those things where it was very close, but it seems like Obama eked out those, at least in those two elections.
You're probably right.
So like Ohio is that state, that's purple. You can either go Republican or Democrat. It's very contested.
But that's
very
just always
important.
been the. Not always. I've been.
Okay.
Yeah, I've always been hearing that Ohio's a swing state to kids.
Yeah. So, except for Ohio, I mean, that just kind of piqued my interest because I thought his days in politics were kind of numbered after he got pardoned. But it looks like he's still trying to hang on with his fingernails.
Yeah. Well, we'll see
I saw it because I saw him at the California the convention. He just did.
One of the things a lot of people think about is why would a candidate run a campaign, and why do so many candidates the presidential.
Right.
What you have to look at, and the reason why they're doing this is actually, so what you can do is you can go fundraise for, and then stock it away in a war chest for other. So you use the notoriety you get running a presidential, you'll get tons more money for that, and then you can run another campaign later. Or in the case of Ohio, I believe that after that money, you'll get charities. So you start your own charity, funnel the money into the charity, pay yourself a nice fat salary, go do some things around the country, the charity to help poor people, urban cities. So that means you can go wherever the hell you want,
Or you could, or what I've heard, at least this is from a poli-sci class I took recently, is that individuals will create campaigns and then loan money to their campaign.
Yep.
So they get paid at a certain interest. I don't know how high it is, but you loan money to your own campaign, and then your campaign has to pay you back with a little bit of interest.
So that's one way you can make some money off of your campaign, but you can't really make tons of, because it has to be amount of maximum.
Yeah, but still,
which is good. It's a good return. It's a good investment.
It's a good investment, but that comes to the concept of, if you're really running a campaign, then what are you actually losing, right? Because the people who can loan the money out, let's say, are your at this point wealthy, independent, entrepreneur types, or let's say your professional politician type who has a lot of money on hand. Loan your own campaign a bunch of money, and then if you do successful enough, you'll be able to get the majority, if not all, your money back. So now we have people running for the highest office or running for high office, Senate, assemblyman, or representative, let's say federally representative, senator, president, and you're not putting skin in the game.
Yeah, well, you're actually doing it for ulterior.
Either or more money, or let's say if you don't even make more money, just if you just go on a net zero.
Yeah.
You didn't put anything in.
Yeah.
And that's kind of disturbing to me because I don't know. The thing is that at least the way I conceptualized this country is that when it came to politics is that you had skin in the game, right? That's what gave you interest to be part of the system. But now you're just benefiting the system for yourself.
Well, I think that Olin could actually have any, that's
true.
Other than that, likely getting a rather than sustainable working system, and that's where that's one of the scariest things about Europe. Of the major powers, Italy, most of those leaders are childless.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I.
Yeah, I don't know. I just don't like the idea of when you give money to something and then, or you run for the highest office and you're supposed to, you develop these campaigns where you have an exorbitant amount of money for media, for advertisement, for speeches, for trips, for everything that you're supposed to have all this money for, and let's say you end up giving a bunch of money towards it, right? Because that's what you want to do, and then you don't lose any of it.
Yeah.
What's going to stop any wealthy who's that guy in the 90s that was the independent who kind of proved that third party independence?
Yeah.
Ross Perot.
Yeah.
Perot. It's kind of one of those things. Granted, I would imagine it would been refreshing for a third party, for a third person, a third wheel in a race like that. But if you're not losing anything, I don't know.
Well, the problem with third parties here in the United States, they generally just tend to fight off that the other guy the guy that's closest to you ideological.
Yeah.
So they basically just spoiler. That's pretty much what Ross, from what I.
Bush. I think that was one thing, but also Bush Senior raised taxes.
Well, no. I know he said read my lip, new taxes, but people forget about that, and I think that having at least moderately hurt more than some.
Well, in a lot of ways, politics is run off those stupid little quips, right? People tend to believe them.
Yeah. Well, but I feel like we get did have an input. We get people answer taxes.
Taxes.
Well, obviously that played a part, and we can debate, but the real answer is that Perot how played in.
The economy was slowing down because the war economy was no longer needed because the Gulf War ended.
Exactly. And you can go, and then you got the Howard D, right? We want to say that's what ended. The fact is that his game was already over that. Yeah. It's entirely possible that was like a planned thing to try to get more hype to juice his campaign up.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that it was probably true, but
that could be, I mean that could be possible. I mean it's weird how campaigns work. I mean
exactly.
You brought up how do we call it? You brought up the 2016 run, right? You have 16 Republicans, and weekly it changed. Who's the leader? Who's the new dark horse? Who's the person coming out? Like Ben Carson, right? For like a week or two, he's like, even though how quiet and he's like on Ambien, he's almost falling asleep at the podium. But I mean, there was a couple of weeks there where people were like, oh, he's a runner, and then he just disappears. It's just like he ran out of money.
Yeah.
It's like, what happened to all the money that people gave him? I don't know. It's all gone.
16 Republicans, so much,
so much money.
Jeb Bush took $100 million of it before the race even started.
Well, Jeb Bush, from what I recall, he was developing his war chest all the way from I think 2010.
Oh, I'm sure even before that.
Oh, he was because they were hinting that he was gearing for the 2012 run, and then no. He kind of went away, right? And then Mitt Romney became the nominee with the contentious.
Let's say that this had played. Let's say that Jeb had decided to run.
It wouldn't have worked.
You don't think he would have been too close to
just because of Bush. Let's say the vilification of Obama really was like powered up by 2010. The Tea Party was already being incorporated by and this is something I can name drop later, but no, I mean, I don't think really anybody wanted another Bush.
Okay.
Kind of what happened when Trump ran in 2016.
Yeah.
You think Bush was the same thing? Bush was the I think it would have been worse for Bush, but and he was going against Obama too, which say what you want, how let's say conservatives in particular like him all too much, but moderates and in the left loved him and liked him still.
No, I was more done in that election. Could he have beaten Romney?
I think he could beat Romney.
Yeah.
I think he could have. Now the question is that you have Santorum, who was the dark horse. It's weird, but he was the dark horse until he dropped out.
Well. No, I was just remembering that.
Oh yes, that's hilarious. I still find that to be one of the funniest things ever. I told my dad about that. He was kind of grumpy about it, and then remind him a couple years later, he's busting up laughing. It's funny. It's like I think when I first heard about that, I was dying laughing. It was the funniest thing. It's like that's not funny. It's like it's hilarious.
Well, the problem is you
it's
can't.
Funny.
As the good game internet, you win. That's basically what you have to say.
Good game, But I mean, that's probably I think at least my opinion, and at least of the Republicans in that race, they could have never done that. They could never say good game internet.
I know.
Even in this race,
are savvy on the for that.
It's just they're just too old. They don't understand the internet all too much.
No, and they don't understand mobs.
4chan.
How things escalate. Yeah. 4chan,
yeah. Well, just trolling.
I love 4chan. I have no ill will. It's the best place ever. Somebody said the word, so you gotta qualify it just to make sure.
Gotta qualify it. No, those guys. Whew. Weaponized autism right there. They are
great. I've been loving the stuff I've seen out of for the last couple of years. From the capture the flag with Shia LaBeouf.
Oh yes,
to
that's great.
Bomb the terrorist with the Russian military. I mean, just spectacular. They really are turning into a kind of an intelligence, decentralized, not connected intelligence. Literally they found terrorists in Syria using this with the capture the flag stuff. Sent in the coordinates of the Russian military, and they took care of it. And of course the Russians are pragmatic enough to be able to take them and on it.
If you want to know anything, the Russians
what?
All I can say was when the Russians got themselves involved with Syria, I mean they really meant business. I find it I think was it when they first got involved? Was it 2016? Or 2015.
Earlier. So Russia's had a stake in.
Oh no, they have. But I mean, like this major involvement that they've now they've committed themselves to.
Oh,
it's only
okay,
been short.
yeah.
I know that because Damascus, like, it's their only warm water port, one of their only warm water ports outside the Black Sea.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, that's something that they need. That can't fall.
Yep.
But
they've also got a bunch of pipeline. I think.
Well,
there's that oil fish pipeline. There's all sorts of going on for Syria.
You know what was funny? Actually, this reminds me, and this might make you guys cringe because it kind of makes me cringe. Was now because you mentioned oil fields and pipelines. I think it was 2011 when the Syria thing really kind of kicked off, and it was Glenn Beck, of all people. Does that make you shiver a little bit, Glenn Beck? Like,
yeah,
I haven't heard about that guy in a long time. But
that's fortunate.
But he was talking about how the rebels in Syria weren't really like Syrian. They were funded by Qatar, the UAE, and Saudi Arabia.
Okay.
And especially Qatar and Saudi Arabia, because I think it was 5 years before the Civil War started. They went to Syria saying they wanted to build a pipeline from Saudi Arabia through Syria into Turkey into Europe. Syrians denied them. 3 years after that rebuttal, the Iranians, the Chinese, and the Russians give them money, and they start building a pipeline from Syria through Jordan into Turkey into Europe. And so then 2 years after they start this deal, gets involved. Next thing you know, you have a civil war. You have the Arab Spring, and then you have a civil war that's going to throw down this dictator that who has been horribly abusive to his people. And then we, the United States, falling in tow, behind the behind the Saudis and backing those rebels, and then we get involved. And he kind of laid this all out, and it's just like that actually kind of makes sense. Now it's also Glenn Beck, and he does have a great collection of scarves. I mean, they're fabulous. Actually, they're so fabulous that if I remember, Anderson Cooper actually commented on them. So.
I was looking something up. Did you ever do you know who General Lee Clark is?
I think I've heard of him. Yes.
So he's a retired 4-star U.S. Army general.
Yes.
He was the Supreme Allied Commander during Yugoslavia. What he was talking about is just after 9/11, he got a memo down from the top, which meant, Bush himself or his Secretary of Defense, talking about 7 countries take out in 5 years. Iraq, Bing, that rings a bell, right? Syria, Somalia, Libya, Sudan, then Iran and Yemen are 2 on that list that haven't been messed with yet.
Well, Yemen actually has through Saudi Arabia.
A little bit, but they're not quite at the place where, Somalia is. Or with, Sudan, we literally split the country in half.
Well, yeah, I mean, Sudan's had a problem since the 90s or the 80s with the Muslim Christians.
Well, they've all had problems, but if you look at that list, that's an eerily accurate list. It didn't take 5 years, but...
Yeah, definitely.
If we hadn't got bogged down in Iraq with that war, if that had... those other 6 in that time.
Yeah, but, I mean, Yemen is actually in a very critical stage, if not almost a failed state. Libya is a failed state. Somalia is a failed state.
Right?
Syria could have been a failed state, but...
it's being held together by the, barely.
The Russians and the Iranians, and the normal Syrian army, or the regular Syrian army. Iran, actually, out of all places that should have been cracked in half by the Arab Spring, actually survived it quite well. Because, it's one of the countries that you would think if the Saudis and the United States were, let's say, behind the Arab Spring and we're trying to take out all these countries and all these dictators, the one country you think that they would want to crack would be Iran. And no support went that way. Yep. So maybe there's a deeper level of political chess going on that we don't know. But I don't know.
Yeah, I find that list very troubling.
Well, I mean, if we're good at it, but let's say if it is true, how much money have we expended into it?
Yep. Well, he didn't say why it's going to happen, and then it kind of sort of has happened.
It sort of has happened, and the world is not better for it.
No.
Maybe the internet will call this 4000D interdimensional chess, because let's say how could this conspiracy go? It can go because Trump was talking about No, hold on. Okay. Let me see if I can get this. Because Trump went on the Oprah Winfrey show in the 90s, I believe, talking about how we were getting screwed on trade.
Yep.
And the one trade partner that we were getting screwed on, even back then, was the EU. So think about it this way: that list supposedly comes out before 9/11. A lot of these African and Middle Eastern countries become failed states, sending a bunch of refugees into Europe.
The list came out after 9/11.
Oh, after 9/11.
Yeah, but it's still.
So it's eerie, but let's think of this conspiracy, just because grape juice. So all these failed states happen. So then we send a bunch of refugees into Europe to swamp them financially, socially, culturally, and infrastructurally. So then Trump, when he finally becomes president, can deal with them and actually get free trade.
Well, and according to Obama, our greatest ally, we helped try to get them off that, which is why we pushed Brexit.
Yeah. Well, actually, the thing was, and I don't know if you two follow Sargon of Akkad at all. I think you met him minimally, but have you met him, Ryan?
Yes,
was it you?
I have met him. He's a very nice gentleman.
But he was talking about how when Trump visited the UK on his last official visit, how more or less he did everything in his speeches and in his conference to assure Theresa May that we had the United Kingdom's back in Brexit. He completely dropped the ball on it.
Yep.
And so I think they went with the second best option was just open free trade into all of Europe, from just the United States.
Yeah.
So now, even if they stay on the market, which it looks like they will, they still have access to U.S. goods through the EU,
It's just such a mess. I don't understand why I do understand. It's so awful that their government reneging on that agreement that we'll vote. People said we want out, and now they're doing their power to keep that from,
Well, I mean, I can think of a couple examples of our own government doing that.
Sort of,
not as bad.
Give me an example. I want to hear one.
What would be an example? Reneging on promises. Usually, I would imagine it is promise of more or less the upholding of our rights. So let's say the Fourth Amendment. And so one of the big controversial thing was the National Defense Act of 2012, which we're literally in the literature. It states that if you're, let's say, not convicted, but let's say if you're deemed to be a terrorist here in the United States, even as a U.S. citizen, they can send not the police, but they can send the military to kick down your door, drag you out of your house, detain you indefinitely without, giving you charge of what crime that you've committed.
Well, I mean, they can do the same thing but kill you overseas.
Oh yeah, no, true. But I'm just saying here in the context of the United States, and everyone freaked out for a week because that's our attention span. But for that 1 week, it was just like, hey man, this is wrong. The president even came out. Well, President Obama said that even though these powers are in place, I would never use them against the American people. It's like, that's great. Oh, that's a sweet assurance. But how about the next president?
Yeah.
And they renew it every year.
Yeah.
Every year. And it's still the literature. But
I mean, it's still fundamentally different because at least you have some kind of you can go sue them for violating your, you know what I mean?
Well,
Britain,
if you're not detained.
Well,
if you're not detained.
Well, then you're not having your right violated. Good job.
Well, I'm saying no. I'm saying if you are not in the case, how can you sue if you're detained indefinitely?
Oh, you can.
That's what I'm saying. But I understand the case in Brexit where they put it to a vote. And literally just through pressure of people not wanting to go along with the vote, they're not going along with the vote.
Well, and it wasn't just kind of, but, they went through all that trouble to do it. I'd be pissed if I was a citizen.
Oh, I would be pissed too. I'm kind of upset by it. Just on the fundamental, idea that they put it to a vote, the vote won, and they're not doing it.
Yep. Well, and the whole British, anywhere else, especially you don't even really have any rights. Whatever Parliament wants to do, they have basic freedom to do.
And this is the sad thing. And maybe if this goes along the way of the Brexiteers, and this goes along the way with, let's say, Sargon and all of them, but I would probably have to say, at least as an American observation, the British system is that here at least compared to the American system, we actually wrote some things down.
Yep.
And everything, all the rights that they have, all the fundamental liberties that they've had the privilege of the last, since the Magna Carta and every evolution of common law, they never wrote down.
Yep.
It's like freedom of speech, that's a liberty. That is a mutual understanding between, of, let's say, a cultural thing. It's the same idea with freedom of speech in the States before the 14th Amendment. like in Virginia in like 1820 or 1850. You don't really have the freedom of speech. You don't have the First Amendment because the 14th Amendment wasn't applied. But it was kind of this common culture that you could speak. So they kind of just went along with it in a sense, right? It was cultural custom.
Yeah.
But cultural custom, when challenged and not having any legal basis, you know.
Well, and the problem with they've encroached on those rights. So there's certain hate speech, laws and can fine you, and Canada's. But I think we wanted to talk to Kevin a little bit with Facebook.
Yeah. Well, actually, I wanted to start off with. I don't know if you guys heard about what happened to Candace Owens recently.
Yeah. So she replaced white with black and different
and Jewish. Yeah. So the tweets of the New York Times recently hired an editor. Her name is Sarah Jong, and she has tweets going back to 2014 talking about hating white people and all that. What Candace Owens did, she just retweeted it by substituting white with black and Jewish, and she actually got a 12-hour ban just for replacing, those words, and no ban for Sarah Jong for talking about white people.
Well,
no.
I think the first thing to say when we're talking about these two accounts, I guarantee you they have somebody over there at Twitter. I doubt they had heard who Sarah, the likelihood that they're going to catch her once in a while bigoted, or Lauren Southern did 5 seconds, completely different. They're just, but I do think ideal they try to impose them on other people by ban.
Yeah.
Yeah, we talked last week about the statement that they put out in response to accusations of shadow banning and all that, and how they sort of, in not so many words, said that they are shadow banning.
Yeah, well, they redefined shadow banning in a way that didn't apply to them, but then described what shadow banning actually about.
Yeah, they said in their post, they said the best definition of shadow banning is deliberately making someone's content undiscoverable to everyone except the person who posted it, which is not what we would assume is shadow banning.
That's a very expression of it that happened very, if any, right?
Yeah, so usually it's just having it harder to find.
Yeah.
Having the content harder to find. And they said, we don't shadow ban, but we do make content harder to find. So
the thing is that I think at least my input on it, because I'm not on Twitter, or
neither am I really. I have a couple.
I rarely post on all my social medias that I do have, and the thing is that it's these conglomerates, really, like let's say like Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, like Instagram's not so bad, but really these are like hegemons in this social media atmosphere where they take up a significant amount of the market share, and there's really nothing to compete with it at the moment. So they can get away what they want. And then because now it's so pervasive, and because they're so large, that everybody kind of respects these these companies or corporations as institutions, in a sense, at least in the socio-cultural zeitgeist, in a way. So it's like, and so now we're relying more and more on these corporations. Actually, and YouTube is another one. And they just get away what they want. It's just like, they shouldn't do this. It's like, well, they can because they're these institutions, and it's just it's not right until there is at least market parity where you have multiple other social media sites where people can branch out, make it more competitive. It's just going to continue being insular and sterile.
Well, I think we're about ready to move on to a wave internet. So I don't know if you guys remember. Well, Kevin, but back in the day, came out you saw everywhere.
Yeah.
Well, you remember AOL keywords? That's what's called a walled. So that's content that AOL made there. And as long as you were using AOL keywords, you couldn't go into any unsub sites or any of the scary play internet for the time, right? Well, that was a phenomenon where you would go to service, that service keep you inside of its little, and there's been different waves. Later on, people had an ISP that was their usage, right? You wanted, and I think now we've been kind of going back towards walled gardens where I'm using Facebook 90% that I'm on internet. you know, and I see my news in Facebook, and I see my updates from my friends in Facebook, that sort of thing. And I think we're going to start moving back away from it, you know, to more open, decentralized network. We don't want people to have, we don't want a Big Brother corporation to have our data here in the next.
Okay, I mean that would be nice.
I hope that's my hope. But
I don't know. I think actually, in a way, I think social media is actually more or less being built to be insular and to be.
Oh yeah,
I don't know.
It definitely just absolutely every website, like all of that, entirely to make sure they don't want.
Yeah.
And that's why they put big warnings to try to. That's not doing you anything to keep you from
on
leaving,
the site.
You know.
Yeah. Well, I mean, at least in YouTube's case, the only people they want off is their old, free thinking content creators. That's all they want off.
That's an entire. Yeah.
It is, but what I mean insular. I mean, sorry. Where they it's social media is being built to be hegemons or to be just certain cookie cutter. One fits kind of like all. YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and then all the little subsidiaries that all connect into them, but it's kind of all the same. I don't know, playing field in a sense.
Yeah.
It's monopolized. It's structured and systematized, where it's going to be harder and harder to develop other platforms.
Well, I feel like we kind of got away from the question or what he was talking about.
Oopsies. Sorry.
On that point, though, there is an alternative to Twitter. It's called Gab. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's supposed to be, more open, and they don't shadow ban anyone for any.
There's another
kind of hate speech or whatever.
There's another one. I think it's called Mammoth, like that, where it's actually a federated. So you can make your server for Mammoth, and then you can connect your to other and kind of have a federated. So we could make an entire Twitter for Cal State Full. Okay, we can make a holder for that, and then we can connect that Twitter to another Twitter server, and they can both communicate with each other.
A confederation of Twitters.
Yes.
Oh, that sounds amazing. It sounds horrible.
It sounds really complicated and confusing.
Not horrible in a way is that, Twitter, and let's say if we're just going off the Twitter example, as a bunch of cancer that is.
Yeah.
And now trying to get people to agree on terms in which to communicate between one another.
Well, actually, that's actually one of the problems. One of the podcasters who actually made the service, and because he there's a whole list of other servers that block everyone because they defined him as someone. So there's a whole class of users that use this unfederated network that just can't even see that people exist there because their admins have blacklisted
jeez.
It's so insane. It's all because he used something hateful once.
He said something mean on the internet, so
yeah. So now his entire server has
nobody can find him.
But yeah, so that is one of the problems.
Jesus.
So Kevin, what were we talking
mean
about?
On your Twitters.
I do want to hear about that as we're approaching an hour of our podcast.
Oh, about the meme that I posted that got me banned?
Yeah, just kind of that
experience. 3 days. Yeah, so I have this meme page where I post stolen memes, and I posted this one meme. Let's see if I can find it. Here we go. I showed you guys last week, but this isn't being recorded, right? Video recorded?
No, you're right.
Oh, okay. Well, should I describe it then?
You can show us.
Okay.
Oh yeah, that one.
Yeah.
It's the seat buckles. Okay.
So this airline came out with a advertising campaign, I guess, to show support for gay people, I guess. So it says it doesn't matter who you click with, and it shows two seat buckles. There's the male and the female part of the seat buckle. So they show one with the male and the female going together, one with the male and the male going together, and then one with the female and the female going together. And right below that, there's a picture of a guy sitting comfortably in the seat who has the male and female part attached, sitting nice and safe. And then the two passengers next to him, who presumably have the wrong combination of seatbelts, they are on the floor bleeding, probably dead because they don't have the right parts. So I got banned from using Facebook for 3 days because I posted that.
3 days.
What was the comment, or what reason did they give to why you got banned?
They said it violates their standards of hate speech, but I'm not sure how. There was no necessarily any hate speech in there. What I'm assuming is that because there's two people on the floor bleeding, that it might show violence toward people who, you know.
Well, yeah, but that wouldn't be violent for.
Well,
violence
remember,
or
speech is violence, Ryan. Speech is violence.
Well, I've also seen other videos. They'll cover up the post and then say, click here and you'll see graphic content, right?
Yeah, there's a lot worse stuff on Facebook.
Yeah.
Oh,
well,
yeah, I know.
There's,
you know what's funny?
children getting hurt.
Maybe this is just me when it comes to Facebook, but there's times where, like, I don't log into Facebook for, like, weeks at a time. So, like, if I ever, like, got banned, like, it just doesn't, like, I don't know. I don't know. I don't get that same effect as maybe someone who uses it more. Like, I could go a long time without using Facebook.
Yeah, I could go. It's so easy.
Yeah, I don't post anything. I like some things, and then I may peruse it for maybe, like, 10 minutes, and then...
Also, I didn't mention this last week, but my Instagram page, I have like this political Instagram page. It got totally removed.
It got just removed? Like it doesn't exist anymore?
Yeah, didn't tell me why. Just,
Scrub.
I mean, I've had a few posts that were flagged. Like, this time they didn't give me a reason at all. I can't log in, can't do anything.
I wonder if they've, like, connected all those accounts. I wonder if they know that...
That could be. I mean, Instagram is owned by Facebook. So,
I do have my personal Instagram link to my Facebook, and it's all sort of connected.
Yeah.
I could have posted from my Instagram account to my personal Facebook if I wanted to.
They're erasing you, Kevin. Slowly but surely, they're just gonna scrub you out of existence.
Well, that's the crazy thing. At what point is that actually need to site allowed to? I wonder at what.
I had to go back to the old rotary dial phones.
Well, it's actually kind of a
Telegram.
People are going back to.
Yeah, I think I just saw. I think it was a tweet from T-Pain. It's just like, we all got to go back to flip phones because I want the feeling about hanging up on somebody to mean something or something like that. Yeah,
just slap it. But seriously, I think because all the tracking, I was talking like that sort of stuff. That all happens to apps. So if you don't have apps and you're accessing a browser, that kind of tracking isn't possible. So I think that there's more and more people that are understanding they don't want to be tracked and they don't want a log of everything they've been for the last 30 years to pile up.
Or maybe they just don't want to be around the culture of social media. It's outrage. Yeah. Everyone's just angry with one another. Well, people are just go on, rabid, insipid rants about things that annoy them.
And even if it's great, I don't know, I've been guilty too. Is it really healthy to be walking down the side of the street like this, dodging poles?
Probably not.
There's a number of people that aren't as good at dodging.
Well, I think people. I mean, wasn't that a problem before, where people, when it first came out, people would be on their phones all the time and get hit by cars and stuff like that because they're not paying attention? I think I haven't heard many of those stories recently, so I think we've gotten better at dodging vehicles.
Well, didn't London put like padding around their poles or something for a while because they were having so much of a problem with people texting handle it?
Wow.
Yeah.
It was like they can't just tell people, hey, like, look up once in a while.
No. They gotta.
Nope. We're gonna nerf the world for you.
They can't let natural course.
Well, remember, government responsibility.
You should have a license. You should have a license for texting and walking, and for texting and driving.
Hey, don't give them ideas, Kevin.
Honestly, I text and drive all the time. I'm a pro. I'm a pro. I'm not hurting anyone.
That sounds like.
It
sounds like the story about the man who got pulled over drunk driving, and so the officers asked this old man, so why have you been drinking and driving? He's like, no, officer, I haven't been drinking and driving. I've been drinking it when I stop at every stop sign. And I put the drink down when I drive, and when I get to the next stop sign, then I take a drink.
That's reasonable,
You're free to go.
But more on a more serious self-driving car, how quickly those
I think so.
Kind of
I think there could be a thing. Oh, I think so.
I think it's a good way for the government to kill people.
That's true.
If they're already following you on social media, they're gonna either crash your car or have someone else's car crash into you.
Well,
something like that.
there's actually really good to keep that from happening. One to make the actual is the so instead of a hard drive where you rewrite the information, it's literally on a metal disk. You cannot.
Unless you go in there with the file, just.
Well, yeah, but I mean, if somebody goes to that trouble to switch out your disk, and hey, we already know car companies great at making it impossible pairs on, so they can hide those underneath, wherever they want to put them to make it as hard as possible.
Like that was the thing about the new line of Jeeps, because like on Dodges, for Dodge or Jeep and Chrysler, I don't know about other car manufacturers, but for Chrysler, especially for Jeeps and Dodges, there's a way that you can, you know how you can turn your key to battery?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, for people who are going to listen to this who probably already know this and this is remedial, but you can turn the key to battery 1, 2, 3 times really quick in quick succession, and then leave it, battery on, and on your odometer, you can it'll tell you all the engine codes that are like you go to check engine light. So you can actually look up yourself what's wrong with your car.
Oh,
so
nice.
Like let's say like an 0700, 0135, 0435, down the list. All right. And so it made it enthusiasts, especially for Dodges and for Jeeps, to actually go in and fix whatever is on their own car, because people tend to do that. But in the newer lines, they don't have that feature anymore. They don't want people fixing their own cars. They want people going in.
Well, what's cool now is the OBD are getting really cheap. Pretty much to the point where you can just stick a little thing over the OBD2 reader, and it'll Bluetooth you all the info to your smartphone as you're driving. But I think that self-driving cars are huge. And
I know this has been brought up on a bunch of other podcasts, but I know like Joe Rogan, I think, is the biggest one. And I think they said upwards of 45, 50 million people drive primarily for their work, for employment.
Oh, yeah. It's the number one employer, men.
It is driving.
Yes.
I mean, that's a significant amount of people. But, I mean, look at the benefits. You have a vehicle that can hopefully run efficiently, more so than a person can, be almost error-free, especially if those self-driving cars have a way of intercommunication with one another. So they can speed up and slow down depending on all the other cars around it, all communicating simultaneously.
Well, the interesting thing is, I would like to actually a form of communication between the cars that isn't like the normal radio that you would have internet communication over, where it's more like, they've got a certain light that gets flashed for violet spectrum, rather than, a hackable internet transmit could theoretically.
Okay.
That'd be interesting. But
that would be interesting. But but nevertheless, is insurance rates are going to drop significantly. Employment overhead, at least when it comes to labor, will drop significantly.
Mm-hmm.
And if you get the vehicles that, let's say, peak fuel efficiency, because of machines driving it, not a person, you're saving on gas. So I mean, it's going to be, once that technology is implemented in full force, it's going to redefine transportation.
The first 2 places that you're going to see it are on trucks, so like semis, long haul trucking, that sort of stuff, because that's where and then the next place you see them are on RV. That's where you're going to, because I mean, how much more is, I'm talking like the top of the ones that have the double fold out section, 90-inch plasma TV above the master bedroom, the size of my bedroom right now, like California king size bed. Those ones are going to have. Because imagine being able to just go to bed and it gets you to your next destination.
I mean, just in any vehicle.
Well, yeah, any vehicle, specifically the benefit. I'm just curious people are actually going to have us subscribe to.
I mean, I know there's an app. It's called, I think, Fair.
Yeah.
The Fair app. And you more or less just rent a car from somebody.
Yep.
Until you don't want it anymore.
Yep.
Yeah, it could be something like that, where it's just like, I'm just going to rent this car for like 30 weeks.
Well, I don't know if you've heard, but Uber is actually in a lot of self-driving in Arizona. So they have a self-driving car division, and I think main goals is talking, like with the Fair thing in the car. And with Fair, it sounds like
yes.
But with Uber, nobody's going to own anything.
All right.
But that would actually reduce significant cars.
Yeah.
Because you don't need. Because right now, I've got a car that's out sitting in my driveway 24 hours. I'm not driving more.
Yeah.
So that's seriously with that, or if I just didn't have to buy the car.
And if you think of it like that, at least when it comes to, at least here in the United States, because we have so much space, so public transportation more or less has suffered, like with rail.
Oh yeah, it just doesn't even work.
it doesn't work. But when you have something like if you think about a service like this where you really don't own your car, but you could just have a car of your choosing show up whenever you need it, then go away. You barely need a parking lot.
Exactly.
So you save space on parking. You save space on the road because, well, guess what? There's not that many people on the road or that need to be on the road. And if there are, they're not really driving.
Yep.
And that would be insane. And
well, it's gonna do to the roadways what the car did to sidewalk, I think. Because you notice right now there are people on sidewalks significant, and with it being more efficient, we're not going to have traffic. Especially if you won't have traffic in 20, 40 miles an hour all the time.
Maybe even faster for longer trips.
Yeah. Well, I'm just saying in the highly congested areas where right now you'd be sitting in a parking lot. If the cars can all communicate and zipper in the right way, do everything perfectly, instead of going 0 miles an hour, you now go 30 or significant.
Well, here's another thing: it's gonna make roadhead a lot easier. I think there'll still be some people missing that challenge, but I don't know. I think that's something that's people gonna miss, or that's gonna change too. Sorry, the whole RV thing that you thought of just brought that up. Maybe that's where my mind is. It comes up at 12 in the morning, whatever this is.
I don't think that's a time period. Don't blame it on time. There isn't a time of day that you that.
That's true. That's true.
At least be true to thyself, right?
All right, I'll be true to myself. Hey, there are things that are socially fine. Everything's gonna change with something like that. So I don't know. I think that's a point that I think is important to bring up.
It is something
to be missed, or I mean, it's just I don't know that challenge. I think the challenge people will miss because everyone's able to do it. That's not good. But if you think about self-driving cars, all the cars can be tinted. Like all the windows can be tinted.
We don't even have windows. One of the most dangerous parts of a car is
you don't even need windows.
Yeah, can you imagine how a car was? Even if you get into an accident, you're in an entirely metal ball.
Yeah. Huh. Well, I mean, and it could be like I don't know if you ever saw that movie with Vin Diesel called Babylon AD. Came out a long time ago, like 2000.
I can guarantee you I have not seen Babylon AD.
Babylon AD. I think it's called. Hold on, I have it on my shelf here. I don't
doubt the name. Yeah, that's probably what it's.
But there's a character in the movie. It's like this arms dealer that is pretty light, but gives him a job. But he has this armored vehicle, and on the inside, it has no windows. It's all like LCD plasma screen TVs that he can see on the outside. So it'd be something like that in your car, just be a metal box, and then you can see everything on the outside on TVs.
Well, and I bet, it's going to be a little where the window should be cut out. that shows you. I bet it'll even have fans that'll blow air in your face like you have the window open and you're driving at 60 miles an hour.
So like on the screen, like you press a button and there's like a little line that goes down and then like a fan will blow.
Yeah, exactly. Look,
you know what?
You have tinted because you're not a.
Or think of it this way. So if we have those, that's just like a step to like metal matrix pods just on wheels in a sense. It's like a virtual reality in a moving box to go to reality. Then the next step is beyond reality to a new reality.
I hope that we get that kind of thing where we can matrix.
I kind of already have like a really addictive personality. That might be really bad for me.
I don't know. That's a thing possible.
I mean, like you wouldn't like. I don't know, like politics, economics, all that would just like not matter. I'm in my own reality. Be like then Steven Spielberg, that movie that came out. What do they call that?
It would matter if they started trying to pass laws to reality.
Oh, you need a license. You need a license for that, sir.
Exactly. No, you exceeded your maximum number of hours. And the government taxes you at $100 an hour going forward. Do you accept? It's the government. Yes, you accept. There is no
compliance check. The IRS goes around with guns with compliance checks, throwing you out of pods, beating you with batons.
Yeah, see, they do.
Yeah.
And all the boomers would be okay with it because the kids should be out experiencing real life. Why are they in the?
Why are they so lazy? Oh Oh my gosh.
That's
Yeah,
what
why are they so lazy?
We're gonna be telling our kids, you gotta go play a real video game with a controller. What's this gosh darn contraption?
It's okay, and like the more lenient parents, it's okay, son. You don't have to use the joystick. Just use the 360 controller.
Yeah.
It's much easier. Or how about the ones with the plastic guns, like Duck Hunt or something like that?
Yeah. That's what you gotta
Use this, Sonny.
Only controller
Use this, Sonny.
accepted to use that. E-golf, Duck, Mario controller. Just read math every.
Oh, snap.
All right.
Oh, was it an insane rant? I mean, we didn't even get to the plastic straws.
No, I
That's
know.
ridiculous. I mean, we can go over
Do we
real.
want to do plastic sugar?
I mean, I think because it's kind of dying down because it seems like all the articles that are up or come from come just from the end of July.
Okay.
But I didn't realize like how many cities actually have banned them over the years.
Really? Like over
like,
how many years?
I mean, not over the years, but over this year.
Oh, okay.
Primarily because like what we thought was San Francisco was actually a number of California cities was doing this.
Well,
So
is it just all the cities that surround San Francisco that you kind of think Francisco?
No. Actually, it's up and down the coast. So San Francisco is actually the latest one in California. Malibu, I think, was the first.
Okay, figures.
Malibu, and then San Luis Obispo. So that's south of San Francisco, by the way.
Yeah, it's about middle of the.
Yeah, Manhattan Beach, and then Santa Cruz.
Where's Manhattan's really?
That's in LA County.
Yeah, it's up north. It's on your way to. It's north of Long Beach.
Oh, okay. That's not that far away.
No, it's not too far away. So it's
it's getting closer. Cincinnati just.
But those were first, and then San Francisco, and then people got it confused because it was actually San Luis Obispo that passed, Santa Barbara. Oh, sorry, that was it. Santa Barbara also passed it too.
Okay.
Santa Barbara was the one that had the up to 6 month jail time. So it was $1,000.
What are you getting 6 months of jail time for? Handing it out without?
Yes. So if you're a waiter and someone asks you for a plastic straw and you give them a plastic straw, it's $1,000 fine or up to 6 months in jail.
That is insane.
But when that story broke, I think it was like the beginning, like July 23rd, like that week.
Mm-hmm.
By Friday the 27th, they backpedaled on that part, and I think they renegotiated the fine. But I think as of now, the fine is still $1,000.
That's insane.
Which is actually interesting, is because Seattle actually has a ban on plastic straws for certain businesses, and it's a $250 fine.
Do you know? Are there any exceptions? Because there's actually some diseases that require or handicaps that require that you use straws rather than being able to.
I don't know if there's any exceptions now. And that's been a big thing, at least in the disabled community, where people have activized saying, hey, disabled folks need plastic straws because metal straws can't work, especially if you have like a neurological disorder like Parkinson's or something like that, where you can't control certain bodily functions.
Well, and you might bite down on it really hard, like if you're going to have a seizure or something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
that could ruin
and so
your teeth.
I think that's still being renegotiated, but nevertheless, I think it's just I think this is kind of through the.
So where do these bans come from? Like what went craze on the left?
Pollution in the ocean.
Okay.
And so I'm not surprised that the majority of these are beach cities. And then there's actually a couple of states too, and other states too, that have actually are up to pass straw bans. But
why particularly straws? Because I mean, the straw doesn't use any more plastic. Starbucks cup. I'd imagine the cup's got to use way more, right? So why are we banning the cup?
Yeah, I don't know. See, and that's the thing. But so I don't know. It's just.
They should have just
actually,
taxed.
What was that?
They should have just taxed. The straw tax.
But
you know how
they're
charging for plastic bags now at the supermarket.
Start charging straws. But here's the thing.
Instead of cap and trade, it's straw and trade.
Yeah, right, but think of it this way, like Starbucks now, they came out with a disposable or like a biodegradable straw that they wrapped in plastic and sell individually.
Yeah.
So it's like this.
The straw isn't wrapped in plastic; it's in a plastic packaging.
Yes. So
yes. I saw those at Starbucks.
Yeah. So and I don't know. It's because of pollution. So like some of the articles I've been reading on multiple sides of this issue, I think it was Las Vegas. I think a Las Vegas paper wrote about it. And it's just like this is dumb. Actually, they're like this is retarded and insane because most of the plastic pollution in the ocean is old fishing nets and fishing equipment rigging that animals get caught up in. It's just like what are straws going to do? There's an LA Times article that they're saying how this is the title. Going strawless is good, but it won't save the planet. Let's go further.
Let's
So
get rid of the cups.
it's just what do they say? 8 million metric tons of discarded plastic ends up in the ocean every year, where it accumulates with the plastic previously discarded. Which is I don't know about the tonnage part, but I know that's true. So it's just. Anti-straw movement has become a front in the culture war, conservative media decrying criminalization of plastic straws as evidence of liberal overkill, which I don't know if you saw, like on my Facebook my cover photo, come and take it. This is the last straw.
I don't think that's where I saw it, but I know that I've seen the internet.
Yeah, come and take it. Actually, once I get my new car coming up in a couple of weeks, that's the first decal I'm putting it. Come and take it. This is the last straw. And kind of the joke, at least on the conservative wing, is that they're kind of equating this to like the kind of the gun issue here in California. They're trying to tax our guns. Now they're going to take and tax our straws.
Well, it is kind of the same thing. It's just on an even more absurd level. Because I think there's a lot of people that can get behind the idea of misguided that would have the effect on gun crime. But at least it's understandable. Like, a gun actually kills people. I actually care about because they matter. Where it's like straws. You see that. I think it all came.
I would imagine so. I've never actually not seen the picture of the turtle. Like did it get like impaled like through the chin and
it was
out
just,
through the head or something like that?
No, it was just stuck up ink. I don't know.
Stuck up its nose. Hey, it could have been running. You could never know. It could have been just doing a massive rail of cocaine off a hooker's ass, and they caught him middle of act. It's like, oh, what to do? It's like straw pollution. But nevertheless, so in the cities that have either passed it or up to pass, in California's Alameda, Carmel, San Luis Obispo has it, Davis, Malibu, Manhattan Beach, Oakland, Richmond, and Berkeley. Seattle already has one. I think Edmonds has one too. New Jersey is Monmouth Beach, either is up to pass it or they're in the process. Florida is Miami Beach and Fort Myers, and other areas is New York City as the city, Hawaii as the state, and California as a state are looking to at this plastic straw issue. So this is not just from a localized, let's say, beach kind of city, because it seems like that's where it's all related. Now it seems like states are actually going after straws. Certain states do. And as we know about California, whatever California does, a significant amount of the nation will conform to it.
Can you imagine people are going to start like 3D straws? Just have something to like seriously, because paper straws are the worst.
Well, the funny thing is that if you 3D print a straw, it's not a one-use straw; it's a reusable straw.
I could.
I think you'd be fine.
Print a one-use straw.
You probably could. You probably could.
Because it just has to do with how fluid the plastic.
Should they call it California ATFS? Alcohol, tobacco, firearms, and straws.
That does seem like an appropriate. On their emblem, do they have any like reference of the
ATF? Is alcohol, tobacco, and firearms.
Well, I know what it stands for. I want to look if it has like an or something on it.
No. It's just this is getting ridiculous. Alcohol, tobacco, firearms, and straws.
Well, I think it would fall
show
under
me that Coke
firearms.
Ah!
Hold it. What's out of?
Oh Jesus! Take the straws first.
Hitler took the straws.
Hitler took the straws. Mao took the straws.
Mao took the straws.
First they came for straws, and I said I drank out of soda cans.
I drank out of a bottle. And then they came for the cans, and I still didn't say a word because I still had my bottle.
Well, did you I don't know if you guys have heard about this. It might be an urban legend, but Cliff, that a town a while in the 50s dumped their trash, okay? So what happened, the glass all got like swept out, and then it would gradually come back. Well, eventually they had entire filled glass rocks could possibly nice and rounded. 10 years came back to, so now this place is trapped on the California because of their glass beach. And it's because they were dumping trash over the side of it for like 30 years.
You know what? Hold on. I think I've heard about it, but okay, I see. Hold on. Just because I can do this. You can see. I don't know if you can see my screen.
Yes. Yep. I can.
But that's it, right? So.
But the Unity only has the.
You know what's funny is like this is like a miracle. I would imagine this is a miracle because now granted.
First one of the
right?
night.
Now granted, right?
I think it's like his 10th, but.
Oh, maybe. But
up to
now
9?
granted.
Yeah.
People are really fucking. People are really fucking dirty. Not gonna lie. Like people, it's not that. Like I said, like there's things that go way too far. But I mean, my dad told me stories when he was out in Sinai, like on Mount Sinai, where people go every year. And when he was stationed out there in the 80s, like 89, like he and his company like would rappel down the cliffs of Mount Sinai, picking up all the garbage.
Yep.
Ironically, from all the European tourists, quote unquote. They think they're so uppity. They're dirty people too.
You know what's a huge trash on Mount Everest?
I wouldn't be surprised.
Well, it's everything from Doritos bags, that bag.
That's what you do, though.
But it goes all the way up to just dead bodies. They have these bodies that they're actually like mile. Oh, hey. There's Jim.
There's this guy.
2 miles for the summit.
From the summit. Oh, you know what it could be? It's like here's the first guy. Do you have your oxygen tank? Here's the next guy. Do you have your oxygen tank?
Yep,
here's this guy. You should have brought your tank. But I mean,
that's the kind of sick like culture that's evolved around Mount Everest.
If we're gonna go like on the environment, because I backpacked in like up in Yosemite and up in the Sierras and stuff like that. Like they always taught us to just pack it out.
Yep. Well, the Sierra Club even wants you to pack out your poop at this point, which I absolutely there ain't no way you're gonna put my own poop in a bag that then I put on my back within a foot of my foot. This is not happening. There's no way.
Would it count as a smellable, and you have to put it in your bear box?
Oh, look, man, a damn bear. A bear took a crap 20, and I can't take a crap. The bear can. We're okay with the bear and what bears do. I can't do what I do too.
Well, you know how much Taco Bell and hard alcohol I drink. I mean, it's probably a good idea for me to pack my own shit out. But no, it's just like,
you just burn yours. It's probably still alcoholic.
It's probably true. But like the thing is, it's just like I understand where they kind of come from. It's like, yeah, pollution's bad. It ruins things. But don't take the straws. Don't go to jail to go to straws. It's ridiculous. It is ridiculous. Until they find something where like paper straws or biodegradable straws, or they make straws out of wheat bran or whatever contraption will be the new norm.
It was made out of.
How do biodegradable straws work?
They're paper.
Do they just disintegrate it when they hit liquid? So how is that even gonna work as a straw?
That's the thing. I don't know. Maybe we'll go back. We'll all go back to sippy cups.
Well, I was talking with my mom.
Good idea.
And she remembers when they actually straws on their bases. So what happens? You go in, you take a sip, it works, and then the whole thing just collapses paper, and it's been worn out by the water and integrity. And so then you're just sitting there with a collapsed straw and like 3/4.
Yeah. I mean, maybe we should just. I don't know. Yeah. So I don't know. Like, at least they backpedaled on the jail time. Yeah, at least you don't have to go to county jail or, heaven forbid, prison. For straws. So, but at least they backpedaled on it. So I think they're just doing fines now.
That's still crazy.
Well, it's just like, let's go for environmental rights. I understand that. Maybe we just keep things clean so we can enjoy it for the next, I don't know how many decades or 100 years, or as long as we can keep it around, the environment around.
As a conservative, I want it to. It's just, what do we give up? It's a balance.
Oh, exactly.
You still have to be able to go out and, I don't want to be like Sierra Club where they're ultimately enjoy the outdoor.
I think they just want to limit the amount of people, period.
Well, that's the scary things. I think a lot of those things are a bad that shouldn't exist, and they don't treat life the way that I believe that's
Well, but in a case like this, where Santa Barbara, right? It's like we're gonna put you in jail. Granted, it's off the books now, so I'm not saying that they have it now on the books. But it's kind of like this virtue signaling when it comes to, we're so environmentally friendly that not even San Francisco is sending people to jail for straws. It makes the other side, like the conservative side, one, mock it.
Yep.
It's been heavily ridiculed, and it's hilarious.
Oh yeah.
But two, if you want to push anything for the environment, you have now lost the audience that you need to.
Yeah.
And nothing gets done.
Yep.
And I would like to see our oceans cleaned. I would like to see our forests nice and green. But yeah, you kind of lose me where it's like, if I want to put a straw in my in a Coke, have a little bit of lunch on the beach, guess what? You're going to jail. It's ridiculous. It's nonsense.
Yep.
And it all starts here in my home state.
Well, and what I don't understand is why, like Starbucks, so instead of, coming up with a replacement, more plastic, a straw lid combo, why don't they come up with it where they donate a bunch of money and actually clean up? Why don't they say they understand, hey, look, what we do, there's nothing the straws from. So you know what? We're just gonna fund some effort.
Maybe they do. And but if once this goes up, I'll just implore people in the comments to type down like, hey, are they doing this? If they're not, then if you're a consumer of Starbucks, pressure them to do so.
Well, if they are, they're idiots. That's the number one thing they should have been promoting once this whole story broke. If they're already, paying money to help, because we know how liberals love offsets. We got carbon offsets. We can now buy straw offsets. The next it'll be lid offsets and then cup offset. But that doesn't have to be forced. You can do it on a voluntary basis, and then liberal can boycott Starbucks if they decide to pay X amount per year to cover the cost of the environment of the straws that they produce.
I don't know. It's just don't send people to jail over it.
Yeah, that's ridiculous.
It's these local governments, and surprisingly, local governments influence more of your life than any other government does.
That's what. Yep. You're gonna
on a day-to-day basis.
You're gonna need a permit to go build something at your house before you're ever gonna do something that the SEC's gonna. We'll do something the SEC's going to be up on you about, right?
Well, I mean, it's just like I wouldn't want to wake up one morning and then, it'd be like Laguna Beach, right? Because in Laguna Beach, they ban smoking.
Like outside?
Yeah, outside. There's no smoke. You can't smoke
a cigarette outside.
Nope, not in Laguna Beach, right? They got sick and tired of the cigarettes, so
that's
you can't
insane.
smoke, right? So
Can you
it's
smoke
actually
inside your house?
I don't think so.
You think it's outlawed entirely?
I think so. Yeah, I think it's a whole set. I'll look it up right now.
What? That's a nightmare.
But what I was gonna say was I wake up at Laguna Beach, or I just wake up here in Orange County, and Orange County passes some ridiculous fucking ordinance, and it's like, and that's maybe something I like to do. It's like, well, you can go to jail now for it.
It's in all public places citywide.
Okay, you can't do it in your house. You can do it in your backyard.
Okay,
but
maybe
you can't be out walking fluffy cigarette at the same time.
No. Okay, so you can still do it in your home.
That's crazy.
But I don't think you can buy it. I don't think you can buy cigarettes in Laguna Beach.
That's a nightmare.
Right, Kevin? Am I correct on that, or am I just being fucking out there?
I'm still looking at it. $100 fine for further violation. All right, guys, that's it for tonight. Thank you for listening to the Now Granted podcast. Say goodbye to Mikey, Ryan. I'm Kevin. Tune in next week for the Now Granted podcast. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Have a great week.
Yep.